Pledge tonight will be led by Mr. Aaron Holliday.
Stand. Attention. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join us for a moment of silence, and I'd ask that you remember Tina Stewart, the young lady killed in MTSU student. Remember her family, friends, and her teammates. Thank you. Consideration of the Director of Schools contract extension. Mr. Blair.
Dr. Burns, based on the 7 recent outstanding evaluations of the Director of Schools, I move to extend the term of the Director of Schools contract of employment through June 30th, 2012.
Second.
Discussion.
Dr. Burns?
Yes, sir.
I'm one of the new members on the board. I've been on it for 6 months or so. And when I chose to run for office, when the position opened up, I began to give consideration already at that point in time. I knew this was something that was going to come up because it had been part of the process. I've had some folks on both sides of whatever issue might be involved here to give some discussion to me, and I just want to make sure I share with everybody that I've given careful consideration to whatever comments have been given. Frankly, there's not been as many as I might have thought there would be. But my training, or my position, I guess, as principal of Oakland High School, gave me some recognition that there will be people on whatever side of any issue that you happen to have. I'll speak to my 6 months. I found there are issues that do need to be handled and resolved in any situation. I found the director to be accessible to me, willing to listen to me, and interested in handling those situations based upon the results of our school, based upon the building programs, based upon the staff that I see working admirably in position. I'm able to support that position. I just wanted to share with everyone that I have heard each of the concerns and each of the positives, both solicited and unsolicited. I just want to acknowledge that.
Okay. Thank you. Other discussion?
The evaluation process for me as well as a new board member was a real challenge, and I want to be frank with the board again that I really didn't enjoy the evaluation the way that it was modeled. I found it to be too broad and didn't allow for us to see a real consensus across the board and compare things. It really failed to give any kind of feedback from the employees of our school system, a direct avenue for them to be able to share something. I found that was a little lacking as well, and I hope in the future that we can work on that evaluation process. Like Mr. Tackett, I went out and sought that information and met with faculty members in the evenings and principals at civic events, and fortunately, I found the information to be largely positive and supportive. Again, there are those problems out there, and I'm encouraged that we're working on those. But I've been in touch with county commissioners as well as folks from our legislative delegation have contacted me, and there is a widely held opinion that Mr. Gill is doing a good job. I do have concerns and a great amount of interest for the future and how we move forward from here.
Thank you. Can I just respond on the evaluation? I've got to disagree with you, Aaron. It's the third different type of evaluation we've done since I've been on the board. None of them are perfect, and I didn't enjoy any of them, frankly, and I don't think Mr. Gill has either. The process is difficult for both of us. You're right, we didn't wind up with a number. I always thought the numbers implied a level of precision that just wasn't there. You know, I was a little skeptical of this essay form of evaluation when it first came up, but I got to say, having done it and having read the comments that you all have written, I thought they were pretty good, pretty accurate, pretty reflective of what we thought. So I thought the News Journal editorialists didn't like it. I just thought they're completely out of line and wrong. It wasn't a dumbing down of the process at all. It required, I thought, greater thought, a little bit greater reflection on what's happened, and gave us the flexibility to talk about what we thought was most important. So, but I respect your opinion. I don't think we're ever going to find an instrument that we're all 100% comfortable with. Wayne?
I'd just like to reflect on, again, 7 outstanding evaluations by 7 board members, and looking around the state with the enhancement of academics or standards with the Tennessee Diploma Project and the 3rd through 8th grades, and for our system to do so well under such pressure and high achievement, I think it has to come from the leadership. And Mr. Gill has assembled an exemplary staff. We have tremendous administrators and a wealth of motivated and brilliant educators. And I think that all stems from the leadership, and Mr. Gill, as Director of Schools, deserves this extension.
Thank you. Other discussion? You ready to vote? Looks like. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to let the moment pass without really saying, I really think that we missed an opportunity. The way that Rutherford County schools are set up, everyone reports to the director. And I feel like that we missed an opportunity to be able to hear from those folks in an organized manner and get a feel from all of those employees back to the board as part of that evaluation process. As we go through this process, I certainly want to take the occasion to say I think that's important, and I think that it should be a part of this in the future. It doesn't really weigh into the motion at hand, but it is topical for the discussion.
I'd be curious to hear, as we think about next year's evaluation, how we would actually do that. But I'm certainly not opposed to gathering their opinion, but we've got, 4,000 employees or so it would be something of a daunting process.
Yes, sir.
All right. The motion is to extend Mr. Gill's contract by 1 year to the end of June 2012. Ms. Michaels, will you call the roll?
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hodge?
Yes.
Mr. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Holliday?
Yes.
Mr. Jernigan?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Dr. Burns?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Congratulations, Mr. Gill. We appreciate the good work you've done. Look forward to continue working with you. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion's adopted. Consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion's adopted. We have one visitor, Pastor Keith Mays. Welcome. If you'll come up here to the podium, and we'll be glad to hear your comments. We ask that you stay more or less to 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Yes, sir. I'll be a little bit lenient.
That's hard for a preacher, but I think I can manage. First, good evening, everyone. And I want to say that I'm standing on behalf of the local NAACP branch as well as the Clergy Coalition, which consists of local pastors of about 17 congregations, as well as the president of the State Missionary Baptist Association. So whereas Mr. Gill has the awesome responsibility of overseeing 4,000 employees, we do represent several thousand members of the community as well. And I too would like to do the same as Dr. Burns did before I say anything, that we would pause just to let our hearts go out to the Stewart family as well as to the other family of the other young lady who's been charged, because certainly all of us are adversely affected when something like that sheds a negative light on our community, on our university, as well as we feel the pain and the devastation of those families. I would like first to commend Mr. Gill on his contract extension, as well as to say, as Mr. Blair said, from my own experience, you certainly have been accessible when I've approached you about various issues. But on the other hand, we do have some concerns that have been brought to our attention, and they come from employees as well as students. And we have an obligation as pastors and leaders in the community to come and not to point a finger of accusation or point a finger of blame, but to try to rectify this situation in a very diplomatic manner. As you know, February is an important month for all Americans, and as we deal with the issues of inequality and inequity, they're raised continuously during Black History Month. We celebrate the rich legacy of the African Americans and their contributions to this great country. However, it's no secret that the future and the future of quality educational experience and opportunities are in jeopardy in Rutherford County from the perspective that have been presented to us. For a considerable amount of time, we have observed the heartbreaking and embarrassing effects of opportunists who perpetuate themselves as leaders in the local school system, which has led us to question the level of commitment to educational opportunities to all. See, this is not just a concern of Black citizens who are at risk and in danger here in Rutherford County schools. It's also females and long-term employees who don't look anything like those of us who are sitting here tonight. And these are all concerns that have been presented to us. They've been presented in writing, and these employees are ready to come forth to be heard. And Mr. Holliday, we too agree with you. Those employees need to be heard. And so we would hope and trust that in the future, when the evaluation goes forward, that there's some system is in place that those 4,000 employees, we know time would not allow each one of them to come, but per school district or per school or certain levels, that there would be some system in place so the voices of those who are speaking regarding the evaluation, their voice can be heard. From what has been presented to us, it appears that the current director of school is possibly, and I say possibly, using divisive strategies and sending divisive messages throughout the system to restrict access and quality experiences for administrators, teachers, and students alike. As tax-paying citizens, we're prepared to launch a grassroots campaign designed to raise the public awareness, targeting possible unfair administrative practices from the director of schools and others under his administration. If necessary, the campaign will highlight the atrocities practiced by your esteemed leader and the inevitable truths that each of you must confront and be able to live with as elected officials of the school board. Practices such as the alleged, and I do say alleged, violation of due process procedure relative to the dismissal or removal of administrators, teachers, and staff members, the unethical display of racially motivated pictures and comments that reflect a lack of sensitivity on the part of at least one school administrator, and all of these are documented and verified. Excessive dismissal of complaints filed by employees have become routine, and the overall perception of weak leadership throughout the system, which has eroded the public's confidence in the officials in charge. As this system continues to address the important task of improving our public education system in Rutherford County, community leaders such as those present here today stand as advocates for reform starting at the administrative level. We also serve as a resource for an in-depth analysis of the director's effectiveness with the use of measurable indicators. We will continue to encourage and expect meaningful and timely dialogue about these issues in a thoughtful, collaborative, and non-threatening way, always keeping in mind the main goal of education is to ensure that every public school participant receives quality support from the school board officials, regardless of who's in the director's seats. If we fail this responsibility, we fail in our commitment to our children and to their families. We have an awesome county. Rutherford County is growing, and the school board, you have an awesome responsibility to keep up with the progress of Rutherford County. And so we're not minimizing what you're doing or the effectiveness of what you're doing, and nobody is perfect. No administration is perfect, no individual is perfect, no system will be perfect. But we are challenging us to really monitor ourselves and listen to the complaints and the problems and the concerns of those who have been adversely affected. And we just ask that everything be done fair, above board, and in order. And those people who feel like they've been injured, that they have a fair voice and that their concerns be heard.
All right,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for sharing your comments. Mr. Gill, do you want to respond, or?
Well, certainly not going to debate.
Yeah, right, no, but-
Respect your comments. I would be interested in hearing of the atrocities of which you speak. I think my record stands pretty clear with respect to the number of minority principals I've hired since I've been here. You know, we had to Tennessee and inquired recently about several counties throughout the mid-state about tenure teachers had been cut, had been terminated. We'd had 7, none of whom were minority. I hired the first African-American high school principal, the first female high school principals. Certainly respectful of your comments, although I do strongly disagree. I'd be happy to sit down with you. As you said, I was accessible, and for you to share some of these atrocities with me, and I'll hear you out. That's about all I can do, but I strongly disagree that I have in any way mistreated any race or any minority or any female. I think we're all above board out here with respect to how we do business. We try to be fair to all employees.
I think that would be the best way to proceed, is to have a meeting, Pastor, with you and Mr. Gill, and or you could sit down and hash out
Sure, Mr.
some
Wade.
of these details. Yeah,
Reverend
whoever,
Wade.
yeah, whoever wants to come.
Be happy to.
I think we made that clear that we're willing to
Right.
meet. So
I'm certainly in agreement, Dr. Burns. I feel that that's a true beginning of meaningful dialogue. And like I said, and we'll be glad to share the documentation that's been presented to us, as well as the concern from those administrators and students who feel like they've been adversely affected.
I'd love to hear it.
all right, thank you, sir. Just give Ms. Michaels a call, and she'll set it up. Number 8.
Hey, as I mentioned on Tuesday, Ms. Eaton, principal at Oakland Middle School, had expressed an interest in implementing the baccalaureate program at Oakland Middle School. We're not here to ask approval tonight. We're here more or less to orientate you with respect to what it would be like at some point in the near future. We would probably ask for some funding. As you also recall, Oakland High School is the only high school in Rutherford County that has an IB program, and it would tie nicely into that. It would probably make a really neat transition for Oakland High School. That said, Ms. Eaton.
Good evening. I'm here tonight, like Mr. Gill said, to just give you a brief overview of what the middle year program would be like. There it is, except you're going to have to back up to the very beginning. What we would like to do is bring the middle year program in for 2 reasons. One, we think it'll be beneficial for our student body in the middle years, 6 through 8. And 2, we think that this is something that will benefit the high school program that we brought in about 4 years ago. Basically, they go hand in hand. And the program itself really should be a 5-year program, starting in 6th grade, going all the way through. What we would like to do is start it at the middle year and run it for a little while, and then partner with the high school and make it a true 5-year program. That takes a lot of planning and a lot of coordination between 2 school buildings. So we felt like if we could get under control on our end while they're also improving theirs, then at some point we could combine the 2. If you'll take a look at the handouts that I gave you, if you want to look up at the board, one of the reasons that we feel it's going to be beneficial One of the reasons that we feel it will be beneficial is based on the philosophy and the fundamental concepts of the middle years program. The program itself is based on a holistic learning idea where there's interdisciplinary and holistic approaches are combined in order to create a rigorous program of study for students. As you guys know, interdisciplinary means that we are emphasizing connections between all the subject areas, not just one at a time. And also, holistic approach means that there's a broad range of ideas and students that are brought together to meet the diverse needs of any school building. And I don't think I need to tell you that when it comes to diversity, Oakland Middle School certainly has a diverse population as well as the high school. It's also an opportunity for us to provide some intercultural awareness, which is concerned with developing students' attitudes, their knowledge, and their skills as they learn about different cultures. In addition, there's a communication aspect to this where students learn to communicate in all ways, not just written or oral, but by using technology as well. And as you know, technology is the thing that's taken over with regards to not only education, but how the world operates. The middle years program itself is for students aged 11 to 16. So it begins at the 6th grade year, goes all the way through the sophomore year. Some of you may remember that the high school diploma program actually picks up the 11th grade year. So this is the bridge between that and to that 11th grade year. And like I said before, once we get our program running, if you guys were to approve that, then we would combine with the high school and make it the full 5-year program. It's a framework for academic challenge. There are 8 subject groups that are studied, and those groups align with the state standards and the state-approved courses that we are already teaching. The MYP encourages connections between subjects through interdisciplinary learning, understanding connections between subjects in the real world, and it helps the students to become critical and reflective thinkers. This is the program model that some of you that were here when we did the high school remember seeing. I'm going to talk about the individual ones just briefly as we go through. Go ahead, Mr. Hall. The 8 core subject areas include language A, which is English in our case, the humanities, which is history and geography, technology, which gives them access and process and communicates utilizing modern technology, mathematics, which includes regular math, pre-algebra, algebra, and geometry, the arts, in our case, that would be art, band, music, and theater, science, physical education, and language B, and in our case, that would be Spanish, which would feed directly into what the high school is already offering in their IB program. There are areas of interaction that combine with these core subject areas in order to make the program effective. And the ones that you see up on the board is an approach where teaching and learning is organized around themes, problems, and issues. Students seek knowledge and skills from a variety of disciplines to provide an expanded and more complex understanding. With regards to approaches to learning, this allows students to take responsibility for their own learning, to develop an awareness of how they learn best, and develop problem-solving and decision-making skills, develop awareness of thought processes and learning strategies, and develop critical, coherent, and independent thought. For those of you who have been involved in the depth of knowledge training that's going on in our county right now, this goes hand in hand with that. Community and service is another area of interaction. We have a step off on this one. This year, as a first-year school, we required all of our athletics clubs and organizations to do community service already. So we have already implemented this portion of that interaction with regards to our student body. What this would do is allow us to extend that through the rest of the students and allow them to do some student service learning projects with the supervision of school personnel. Health and social education is another part of the areas of interaction, and this is where students can combine the areas that they're studying in addition and make connections between their own health and the health of the society that's around them. It makes them aware of the relationship between the individual and society. Environments is another important aspect that the students will be studying. And again, this is where that you combine an understanding of issues with natural, built, and virtual environments along with the subject areas that you're studying. It allows students to take action on issues explored through this area of interaction. Human ingenuity is another portion that's involved with the core subject areas, and this is where students explore the ways that human minds have influenced our lives. And this is not just a history influence. This includes the social sciences, science itself, and all the other core subject areas, so that they develop an appreciation for the consequences of previous actions and any future actions that they may be involved in. Assessing the students in the MYP program is a little different from the high school. At the high school level, they study for 2 years, intensive, rigorous programs, and then they are assessed not only internally but externally, and those assessments cost quite a bit of money. The assessments are sent off to different parts of the world. They are graded on that, and they receive a grade, and that determines whether or not they get a diploma or a certificate. In the middle grades, the assessment is really just a range of task types. They are assessed on their service learning. They're assessed on the projects that they do as an 8th grade student. Mostly criterion reference. You can use the benchmark testing that we're already doing that can be included in that. And mostly the internal assessments are teacher created. So it's a little different. We are monitored on the type of assessments that we use, but we don't send them off for grading purposes, and the students are not assessed by outside monitors. It's mostly just the way the school has set that up. And teachers will plan both vertically and horizontally throughout the year in order to combine all these themes, to combine the subject areas, and then to come up with the internal assessments that they want to use in order to judge whether or not the student has learned indeed what they were supposed to learn. The process itself is a 3-year process. The first year is the consideration phase, and this is the phase that I am currently in. I've done a feasibility study with my staff, with my students, with my parents to see if it's actually feasible that we bring the program in, if it's something that we think will benefit our students and our school community. Along with that, we look at the cost, the prices, we look at whether or not our staff is agreeable to the training and also the work that they will have to do. PLC feeds right into this, the professional learning communities that we are doing, because they will have to plan with one another. In addition, at the middle school level, we have teams. And the team meetings also go into this because, like I said before, they plan vertically and horizontally. So all that is combined into this. That's part of that feasibility study. Do we have the staff that can do this? We're supposed to share the information with our community about the program, and then there's some training that has to take place. The principal and the coordinator need to attend some workshops and make sure it's something that, again, is feasible to do. And then there's also an application fee that goes along with that. If approved and we are allowed to apply for the application to be considered for this, I would need to submit that by April 1st. The application itself will be ready. I've been working on that. And then we would seek $4,000 in order to submit that application for consideration. The second year is the candidate phase. And during this year, we actually implement the program, and our teachers spend time working on all the planning that I've told you about. They collaborate, they reflect, and we basically develop the curriculum that we want our school to follow. And again, that curriculum is still within the realm of what the state has put forth for us to do. We have a consultant that comes in for a visit that helps us with this planning phase and the implementation. Our teachers get access to the online curriculum center, which provides them with materials and help as they need it. They also get advice from other IB teachers around the world, not even just in this nation. We develop our action plan, which is what we basically plan on teaching for the next couple of years. We implement our standards and our practices. We attend workshops. We prepare the application for authorization, and there's a $9,500 candidate fee that goes along with that. Phase 3, which would be the third year, we submit our application. We have to have that in by October the 1st. We receive feedback on that application, and we're allowed to revise or reflect on anything that we need to. We continue developing and implementing our program. It's always a program in action and progress, so it's continuously being implemented and improved. We host a verification site visit where a team comes in. Those of you who were involved in the process at the high school, remember this is when we had you over for lunch and you met with all those nice folks and they talked to you about the program and what we wanted to do with it. They make a decision after that visit on whether or not we're worthy of the program, and then they let us know that sometime between June and August of that year. That's it in a nutshell. Mr. Sandvig told me I had 5 minutes. Did I stay within that?
You did very well.
The important part I think that you might be more interested in is the fees and budgetary items. And although I mentioned that as I was going through, I've put this up there for you so that you can see different phases and how much that cost. With regards to the overall cost, it's really very minimal, considering what type of program it is and considering the amount of training and work that the teachers will put into it, and also considering the benefits that the students will get from this. I guess if I had to point out the most costly item on there, it would be the 2 Spanish teachers that we'll have to have in order to implement the program. Students have to have 50 hours of foreign language per year in order for us to qualify. So that means they would have exposure to that during the 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade year. And they would do that through the 9-week rotations that we normally do, in addition to some little extra enrichment things that we do. One difference for one set of kids would be the 8th grade year. Some students will be recognized as proficient in 7th grade and during their language arts testing. Those students will take a full year of Spanish and get their Spanish 1 credit before they enter into the high school. That benefits those students who you may have heard from over the past couple of years who have such a tight schedule that they can't fit anything in there other than just those IB courses. And there's always been some concern over that. Band students were concerned, and athletics and some others. Yes, sir.
Sandra, would enough of those students earn Spanish 1 credit in the 8th grade so that it might relieve the need for a teacher at the high school level?
I think so. Looking at the numbers just from this, if I had to look at my 7th grade numbers going into 8th grade for next year, as a group for that, we have 70 students that would qualify to take that. So you're looking at 2.5 Spanish 1 classes, if you think of it that way. So that would relieve some of the pressure.
May offset some of the expense.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. We chose Spanish because that is the 2-year program that Oakland is running. French, they are going to move, it's my understanding, to more of a 1-year program based on the fact that there's not as much demand for that within the school, and they're going to stick with the high school as their junior-senior program. So we felt this would help that set of kids in particular with regards to getting that credit. And again, opening up a little bit of breathing room within their high school schedule so that they can take a business course if they want to, or an extra history course if they want to, because they won't be so tied in to trying to get all that done in just that 4-year time.
Okay, questions from the board? Do you have any idea what level of interest there is? Have you done a survey or anything?
I didn't do a survey. I had a group of parents that I worked with, basically, and to be honest with you, parents that called in and asked about it, I asked them if they wanted to serve on the committee, and so we had about 12, 15 parents that I sat down with, and we talked about this, and we talked about, possibly getting business partnerships and other things like that. I can tell you, from my point of view, it's a continuous question when you bring in the program in,
right.
when you bring in the program in. And I think that came from conversation that happened when we did bring the high school program in. It was kind of a we're going to get this started, and when the middle school comes in, they'll give us the feeder program, and then the program will really take off.
So they have separate classes? I mean, I know at the high school level, some of the AP are...
It's a school-wide program. Every student at the middle school level is involved in it. The only difference would be that 1 8th grade group that gets the full year of Spanish at that time. And to be honest with you, the only reason we'd offer it to just a small group is because the others really wouldn't be ready for it. If they're not showing proficient by the 7th grade in their language arts, they're really not ready to tackle a foreign language.
I think you lost me there with the whole school thing.
It is a school-wide program.
Unlike the high school.
Not like the high school.
Okay.
At the high school, it's more of a magnet program within
Right.
that school because
Right.
it's just for a certain set of kids who can take the higher level courses that lead into it.
Yeah.
At the middle school level, because we don't have the assessments that they do, it is a school-wide program. So all the teachers get trained in it, and they all teach using those correct. And because we are an inclusion school as far as SPED is concerned, even the resource students will be in those classes doing those things. I'm sorry.
In connection with Dr. Burns' question, so the biggest change is what? The instructional methodology?
Yes, sir. Biggest change will be the methodology that's used and basically that holistic approach where we talk about all the time and we want to implement all the time, but this actually gives us an opportunity to get the training in order to do that and then the time for the teachers to sit down and get that work through. The idea of taking specific themes and weaving those in and out of the core subject areas is something that I think is very attractive, and I know it's very attractive to my teachers as well.
Tim, did you have a question?
One on probably each side of the thing, I would suppose. If we're to implement this in a school, in a middle school right now, I think clearly Oakland Middle would be the one that would make the most sense. I think on the other side, we need to think in terms of, are we prepared to maybe consider offering this to all middle schools? Since it's a whole school program, it could be beneficial there. I think cost-wise and so forth, it's just, those are questions we need to keep in the pipeline as we consider this. If we are to take one school, though, and to model it in and give some indication whether we feel like it's worthy or not, I think it's clearly the right one to do.
Yeah, we had that discussion, and, it's particularly common at the high schools. If you give one high school something, you might as well get ready. The rest of them will be asking soon.
Sure.
And we had that discussion. We kind of, Mr. Odom and Ms. Eaton and I kind of agreed, let's see how it went first year or two. If they're experiencing results that we think they will, then it would be wise on our part probably to pursue it in other middle schools as well.
Yeah, Donald.
This, with the high school program, we allow students to enroll, come in there everywhere in the county. If we look at the middle school program, we're going to have parents, I believe, thinking to get them into the high school program, we're going to need to enroll in the middle school. So how are we going to handle that situation?
Yeah, we anticipated that question too. That's a great question. And the answer was we would not allow zone exemptions or students from the outside in simply because they don't have any room. They're already full. I'm not sure it would give them an advantage getting into high school or not. It may if they'd already been exposed to it.
If at some point we do partner with the high school, I'll have to be honest with you, I think it would. But if we run it as two separate programs, then my answer to that would be no.
Right. But I don't know how we would open it up to other students at this point because how many kids you got now?
955 as of today.
See, that you already have a roving teacher or two, right?
I have 2.5 roving.
Yeah, and so she'll need a portable or two next year.
Yeah.
We're big.
Could you bring that half teacher in? I'd like to see that.
I share her with Blackman. She comes in just to teach part of the day. So while she is there, she does her own.
I guess we need some more middle schools, Commissioner Jordan. Is that going to be a problem?
I think we're going to have some portable.
I've already cleared the parking lot out for them. It's ready.
Grant?
Will these costs and fees, will they be supported by the system, or will they be passed on somewhat to many of the parents?
That'll be the system.
It'd be system.
Well, we talked a little about the cost. What would be the annual cost? Be how much, Jeff?
By the time you went with 2 Spanish teachers.
Well, let's put those over here a minute. Just the IB part. Wasn't it $30,000? Then what we said was it an annual $30,000 fee?
No, the annual fee is going to be $8,400 a year.
$8,400.
Right. So once you get past the first 3 years where you're doing the workshops and you're doing the training and you're buying the materials, then it boils down to just that much every year after that.
And the only personnel expenses would be the 2 foreign language teachers.
At this time, yes.
Right.
Grant, did you have a question?
What was the total figure that approximately?
I thought we said, why does $30,000 for the first 3 years resonate?
$9,500 a year.
Consumable
Well, that's it.
Mr. Gill, part of that could have been the consumable workbooks that we were going to have to also order.
And looking at some of the initial training.
And the initial training, because initially we have to train 10 teachers, and the cost is about $1,500 per teacher, depending on the location of the training.
Okay.
Aaron, did you have a question?
Well, I just have some comments. I think it's an outstanding looking program, and it's one of the things that we talked about at our board planning session of being able to kind of go beyond the state requirements or the national requirements and really do something here in Rutherford County that we choose is going to distinguish our students. I love the fact that you've already put the community service aspect in place. Mr. Jernigan, that was one of the things that you brought up, some good citizenship, that we're making that a priority to our students and making sure that that's a part of it. The circular model that you have, it's kind of indicating in the vertical and horizontal training, not just the PLC meetings that are per subject, but across.
It's across. It would have to be planning between the subject areas per grade level in addition to within each grade.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I've heard some discussion about that as well. And, a student who might not get a concept of fractions in a math class, but they certainly value it and understand it as eighth notes and quarter notes in
Correct.
band or something
Correct.
like that. And with that collaborative teaching environment, being able to make the connection between it, you get that student's attention.
Part of what this process will make us do is make that a formal part of our planning.
Exactly.
Teachers do that all the time. They meet with one another and they come up with what they're doing. I'm doing this in my class, and they'll say, oh, I can add that into my science class, or I can add that into PE. But this makes that a formalized process where we have to go ahead and plan for that year the items that we're going to cover together.
I think it's the kind of leapfrog idea that puts us ahead of the curve. I think it's outstanding.
Other discussion? Did I hear April 1st is the deadline? Will this be on our next agenda?
Yeah, we're going to have it on the next agenda.
Okay.
We'll do a little more legwork and have
Mr. Gill?
recommendations.
I have to have that application in by April the 1st.
When's the next board meeting, Michael? Isn't it
It's 2 weeks from
2 weeks? Yeah, so we're okay.
Okay.
March 17th.
All right, well, thank you, Ms. Eaton.
Thank
Sounds
you.
very promising.
Good job, Ms. Eaton.
Number 9.
Okay, first priority goal, the board was technical education. And as defined at the board's strategic planning retreat on February 12, 2011, Mr. Odom and Ms. Nixon, who's the head of the CTE program, will report to you on that. So, Mr. Odom, are you up first, I believe?
Yes, sir. So what we're addressing this evening is some of your concerns and areas at your retreat. So I'm going to kind of begin with an overview of some statistics, and then Kay is going to talk a little bit more about the programs. And you received, I think, the other night, Tuesday night, programs. You can ask some questions with that. So we're going to kind of move through this if we can. It worked before the meeting, but it probably won't work now. I'll move to the other mic, okay? This is your statement directly from, you'll recognize that from your retreat. And so this is the areas that we're looking at, especially looking at, hopefully tonight we can take a look at those facilities, equipment, capabilities, programs that are already going on and that sort of thing. So we're going to share that with you tonight. One of the things that's been coming up frequently is we've mentioned for you that's kind of changed the ball game for us is the new high school reform policy. Part of that was Achieve, that what you were talking about mentioned earlier this evening. And the underlined part in the bold at the bottom is the one that has changed things quite a bit for us. Students completing a CTE elective focus must complete 3 units in the same CTE program area or state-approved program of study. So in the past, you could take any 3 CTE courses, but these students are now sophomores, and so in 2 years, they will have had to complete in one pathway if they choose CTE as a pathway. You can have other, as it says in the sentence above, some science, math, humanities, fine arts could be a pathway also. But if it's CTE, it must be in that path.
And the state is demanding this?
I copied this from the State Board of Education report. I mean, that's just pasted on there, that State Board of Education. One of the things that I thought you might look at, and I might say that says 2008, 2009. They have not posted up the 9-10 CTE portion of the report card. I'm sure most of you have looked at the report card, but in some time, usually by now, there's another tab appears on the report card, and it will be for career and technical education. That's not appeared yet, so I'm having to show you a little bit back. So one of the things that you talked about was, and this is 2008-9, dual credit, dual enrollment, that sort of thing. So you can see with that third blue arrow, we did have 26 students that were involved in dual enrollment even back in 2008, 2009, and some of that still continues. You do have a copy of this presentation also, should be in your packet somewhere. One of the things that we know that makes a difference is that when students are hooked into career and technical education, they graduate at a higher percentage than our general population. So if you've got 3 years there from 2006, 2007 to 2008, 2009, and everything is well over that 90% graduation rate. So there's some definite advantages to get students in CTE programs because they tend to graduate. That's what I'm saying. This again is also from the state report card. Another thing that I thought you would find really interesting here, because it tells you the CTE, the column CTE in secondary schools, the total secondary students, you will see roughly that regardless of the race of the student in those categories, at about the same percentage of students are into CTE as in the general population. For example, African American CTE 17.51%. The total African American was 17.86% at that time. So as you look down through there, you can see it is pretty much reaching every category.
I know male-female's not an NCLB thing, but do you have figures on that?
We sure do. It's surprising how much, Kate, do you know about what percentage are male, female? If you start taking a look at the criminal justice, you look at the health science and that sort of thing, it's there too also. This is for this year. We collected this. Interestingly enough, says some students may be counted more than once if they're enrolled in multiple CTE courses. None of our software that we run that the state is using will let me run a program that'll tell me how many students independently are enrolled in a CTE course. So you look at that number and you're going to see 16,276 courses being taken, but we have 12,700 or so in high school. So some of it multiple count, when you take a look at that. But that tells you, we know that roughly 60% of the students will take CTE courses already. I mean, that's what it'll represent, and that's held true for a number of years. Another interesting thing up here that you might see, one of your questions that'll come up later in yours was, how about replicating courses? And so where there's a blank square up there, that course may not have been replicated from somewhere else, but there's not a lot of those up there as you look across. It's student-driven, it's enrollment-driven, basically. But when you look at the pathways, in fact, you've got every school has trade and industrial, see? Every school has business technology in there, so it kind of lets you see some of the issues related to that as far as enrollment. You can also see roughly how many students are enrolled. The totals across the bottom will tell you how many courses are being taken by students there. And, it's over 2,000 in all of our major high schools, basically, the students enrolled this year in courses. Now, again, some of those are duplicate counts, but it's large numbers in each one of those. Okay. One other thing that you mentioned that we'll talk about, and these are thought points, things to begin you thinking about it. You mentioned centralized vocational school. Mr. Gill, I guess I need to confess, about 3 or 4 years ago, Mr. Gill and I met and said, maybe our legacy should be opening a vocational technical school. And we sent actually Kate to Delaware, to one of the best ones in the country, to look at and visit, and it works very, very well there. I can tell you the trend is moving away from it, but the reason it's moving away from it is some things that I'll kind of show you, and it's really because of legalities and things with this high school reform and things. So, but one of your pro things there is, there's certainly a potential to reduce initial setup and staffing costs because some programs are expensive. A graphic arts program with the printing, access, and art is an expensive program. So, if you could have it in one site like that and students come to it, then that certainly reduces some of your cost in that. You also could ensure, if you offered all of your pathways there, that every student would have availability to all of those programs. That would be ensured. On the other side, on things to consider that might be issues for us is, we know from looking at Central Magnet and all, you've got to start this at freshman pretty much. Once students hook into high school, they do not leave very much. Once they're in with their peers, and we know that from, of course, the sophomore class at Central Magnet this year. So we're going to do it. We'd have to do it for freshmen, I think, and start early. Another thing that you have to think about is a cost, because your freshmen and sophomores cannot drive, basically. And so you're going to have to either transport them or you're going to have to let them drive. The issue that's associated with that, Every time you move them, you kind of lose a period during the day. So you're going to reduce that time that they're at school to transport them from one place to the other. If I were going to transport them, I would probably, if you did a half-day cycle, you'd want some students there first thing in the morning. Some might come in, around noontime, and they'd finish the day so that you don't move them twice during instructional time. The other thing, and this is the thing that's is catching us more than all, is the next one. Required academic courses for graduation. And Mr. Jernigan, this is the thing that's hit hardest. I know Bedford County, Wilson County, others, and they're really taking a look at it now is because of this, because with the new high school requirement, in a single school, you're still going to have to make it a comprehensive high school because every student, regardless, even if they have a CTE focus, if you make it a standalone, will have to have the 4 maths, the 3 lab science. It includes chemistry or physics, the 4 English, the fine arts, the foreign language, and that sort of thing. So that change made it a form, if you're going to leave the students there all day as one group, that you're going to have to look at the comprehensive approach simply for them to graduate. The other thing, as we did this study, Mr. Gill and I talked about, we actually looked at it for Stewart's Creek, is one we were at that time when some of the thoughts were going. One of the things was the 1 to 20 pupil-teacher ratio that's required for CTE courses. That begins to drive your cost up quite a bit. In fact, we approached the state legislature last year and asked for a bill, and it did go into committee. There was a bill written to try to increase the pupil-teacher ratio in courses that were not lab-type courses. Again, some criminal justice, some business courses, and some things that you could do. The bill did not make it out of committee. It may have been some of the smaller systems or whatever, but there was not support at the state level for that to pass. So we tried to divide it. I've said here before, if you're in a culinary arts class, you don't want 30 people using a knife at one time. 20 is enough. But in another class where it's kind of a lecture and a book study, 30 would work, as the same with the other high school ratios. Replicating programs in all schools, and that's why I was referring back to the charts. Some school site programs may not have sufficient enrollment. So in cases where you saw blocks up there, sometimes it was that program just has not had enough student interest to drive that. I'll have to tell you, like many other courses, if you have a real dynamic teacher and people doing, it draws people to the course. You know what I'm talking about there. Some programs are expensive to replicate. Like I said, if you're looking at graphic arts or you're looking at some of the others where if you try to put the same program everywhere, a cost is a factor there. Here's another one that Ms. Nixon made me aware of, but it makes sense. The saturation of the local job market for some pathways. And here's a scenario. How many auto repair or how many cosmetology jobs are available? We want to graduate students from our CTE program that have an opportunity to get a job. So if we put cosmetology everywhere in all of our 8 high schools that are serving this, would that oversaturate a cosmetology market or something? So we look at that also sometimes about availability when we do that. And if you want to know a little bit more about this, our website, Rutherford County website, it's got career and technical standards, and each of those are the pathway, and you can go and read some more about that, okay? Now, if we could, I'm going to ask Ms. Nixon to come up now. If she will come forward, and we'll look at, and she can answer a lot of your questions at the end, I think, probably.
Feel free to stop me at any time, okay? If you have a question, just answer. But I do not have the number on male and females, okay. But I can get it for you.
All right. Don't stay up
it's on the
there.
report card. I can get it. I just don't have it with me.
All right, you just...
Here, you can point me.
I can point. Okay, yeah, you'll have to go ahead. First of all, I want to let you know about what programs we have at the middle school. We have 10 middle schools, and every middle school in the county has keyboarding, which is a little different at some of them. For instance, where you'll see up there on the business technology, the keyboarding, 2 teachers at Oakland Middle and Whitworth Buchanan. Those 2 schools, when these principals were hired, they came to me and they said, we've both been a high school principal and we want keyboarding at our middle school. And we want to teach it for 8th graders, and we will give them a full semester for the credit, and when they come to the high school, they will already have a half a credit towards high school. They were willing to give a position at their schools to do this. Now, the other 8 middle schools have keyboarding, but they teach it by 9 weeks at a time. So in 6th grade, they have 9 weeks, 7th grade, they have 9 weeks, and 8th grade, they have 9 weeks. They cannot get a credit at high school because it's not offered in a full time period. So we do have that in places, though, at the 2 new middle schools. Family Consumer Science, all 10 of the middle schools have teen living, and we'll do modules, and in those modules, they learn about sewing and cooking and what are all the other ones? All of the types of those daily average things that they have to do. They do the ironing and sewing. They do cake making. Some of the teachers have a passion in one area. And so one school may do on cake decorating. Some will do more on clothing. They do, the kids will make boxers or something like this. It's different by each school, but they all have the same modules that they use. All 10 schools have tech ed. Now what that is, it's an exploring of technology. It includes some of drafting, some of video teaching, cameras, all of those types of areas, graphic arts, and everyone in the county has that. So every one of them has one tech ed teacher there. Then the other 2 new middle schools, Oakland Middle and Whitworth Buchanan, they also have 2 teachers that are teaching what is called High School 101. This is a special course that I wrote for 9th graders. And Miss Eaton and Miss Seymour were both from the high school, and they loved that class because it was so wonderful for kids when they came in for the 9th grade to learn more about their school. So those 2 have asked to have a CTE position, and they are teaching this course. And what they do, they are learning the pathways now. Mr. Jerningham, what they're learning, for instance, at Whitworth Buchanan, they are already studying the pathways that are available at Riverdale, so that when they leave from the middle school to go to Riverdale next year, they already know what do I need to go into because I know what is available to me. Oakland Middle does the same thing for those that they study the ones that are available to them at Oakland High School. Next, you can see here, and it's kind of cut off on here, this is our high school teachers by program. So what I've done on the left, right in here, you're going to see each of the high schools. Across the top, you're going to see the types of programs. So we have at Blackman, they have 1 ag teacher, 6.5 business teachers. Now, y'all wonder, how did we get this half teacher? This 6.5 in business and 6.5 in trade and industrial, he is both certified in business and he is certified in T&I. So he does some computer repair part of the day and part of business the rest of the time of the day. Contextual academics, this is a course that falls under career and technical. It is called English 4, which is Communications for Life. It's a 12th grade course, and the students do presentations. They actually go out to the community. They learn about a business. They do a research paper on that business. They present it. They actually, Riverdale comes up here, and they use your boardroom for 2 days, and those students come in, and all of the employers come in and watch the presentations that their students have gone out and visited and learned about them. And so that's a course that is excellent. Our students that leave the high school that go on to MTSU, they take a course that is very common to or much similar to the course that they're offering at MTSU, and so the students leave and they say, oh, wow, I can do this because I've already had this in high school and I know how to do this. The other contextual academic is Principles of Technology. We offer Principles of Technology. We've been offering that in some of the schools for several years, Laverne especially, and because of the new diploma project, students have to have either chemistry or physics to graduate. So all of the principals have come and requested that we put in Principles of Technology, because if a student takes Principles of Technology 1 and Principles of Technology 2, they get a physics credit. So they can take biology, Principles of Technology 1, Principles of Technology 2, and they have met their science requirements for graduation. Plus, we get funding for it. Family Consumer Science, Health Science, Marketing, Trade and Industrial. Those are the programs that we have across the county. Now, if you will notice at Central Magnet, the only programs we have at the Magnet School are under Project Lead the Way. They have engineering, and they also, falls under the Trade and Industrial, and then they have Health Science that falls under Project Lead the Way. Then we also have one business position, which next year we will have a second engineering teacher, and the following year they'll need an additional business position. At Eagleville, they have no health science program, but they have the rest of the programs at Eagleville. Holloway has no ag, but they do have auto at Holloway. They have no health science, and they have no marketing. One of the reasons is because they must have 3 credits in a pathway, and those schools don't have enough students to take 3 pathways in another area. So we've cut down to which areas they really want. Health science at Riverdale, we had it years ago, and we closed it, and they have not asked to put it back in just yet, basically because they don't have space. Mr. Odom. The next one is the T&I programs, and this is a little interesting for you because it says including culinary arts. Culinary arts teachers can be either family consumer science or trade and industrial. So what I have here, when we look over here at culinary arts, the one with the asterisk, Oakland has a family consumer science culinary arts teacher, and Smyrna has a culinary arts family consumer science teacher. But Blackman, Oakland, Siegel, and Smyrna all have culinary arts, okay? Auto, Holloway, Oakland, Riverdale, and Smyrna have auto. If I had auto at every school, we wouldn't have people to get a job working as a mechanic here in the county because there would be so many. Cosmetology, we have 2 programs, one at Laverne, one at Oakland. Project Lead the Way, the only program there is at Central. Computer repair, we have those at Blackman, Laverne, and Siegel. Criminal justice is becoming one of our fastest growing area. Students are really interested to criminal justice because they can either become an attorney, a sheriff, a policeman, they can work into any of the legal areas, anything that deal with that. Some of them are interested in going into forensics, and so that's the area that we're finding that a lot of our students are interested in, and it's not very expensive to have that program. Graphic arts is very costly. We have 5 programs in the county. We have that at Blackman, Oakland, Riverdale, Siegel, and Smyrna. And then we have 2 radio TV programs, and those are at Blackman and at Laverne. For our total teachers, we have 147 high school teachers, and we have 24 middle school teachers for a total of 171 CTE teachers in the county. This is phenomenal. This is more more student teachers than Metro has total. They have less than 100 in CTE. Our advisory councils. I wanted you all to know what we've got in our advisory committees. So I've given you copies of 2 different ones. One stapled together is the school advisory council. This is done by the school itself. All the CTE teachers have business partners that they meet with annually. Then one semester, they do by program area. So all the auto teachers come together and have an advisory council. All of the graphic arts, all the culinary arts, all the business teachers. So we have also then county members. So you have a list that shows you who are the active ones currently by school for each of these areas. Dual credit and CLEP. Middle Tennessee works with us on dual credit, and Agri is the best area that we have had so much wonderful things happening. And I have some ag teachers here, and I just want you to know you're here, and I appreciate you being here as support, because they have worked with me with MTSU, and our students can take greenhouse management in our high schools, taught by our ag teachers, and at the end of the year, they can decide, yes, I think I want to get credit for this because I think I'm going to go to MTSU next year and I want to have these 3 hours of credit. So they just simply pay a $60 fee, take the test. If they pass the test, they get 3 hours credit at MTSU. That works the same way under agribusiness and finance and ag leadership. So those are 9 hours that students could get, 9 hours of credit at MTSU. The other option that we have under virtual enterprise is from principles of management and principles of marketing. We had some of our teachers go and get trained on the CLEP exams and to see, what type of information the students needed to know in order to be successful. And so all of our VE teachers make sure that they cover the information that the students will need to know in order to pass the CLEP test for management and marketing at MTSU. Motlow State Community College is another partner with us, and we have students who can leave our high schools and move to Motlow with credit for early childhood education, credit for principles of marketing, criminal justice 2, and introduction to microcomputers. So they can actually move there and get credit there and start from where they're already at. Articulation with the Technology Center, don't you love that word, articulation? This simply means with the Technology Center that our students leave here with the hours they completed in high school to enter at the Technology Center with those hours. In automotive, we teach 4 of the ASC certifications. A student can leave our school and start at the Technology Center, and they only have to complete half of the program because they've already completed half of the program here at the high school. The software we use, the testing we use, everything is exact that the students use at the Technology Center. Business Systems Technology. We have 3 courses in our pathways that we have asked all of the counselors and all of the business teachers to encourage your students to take. Because if they finish those 3 classes in high school, they can move to the Technology Center, they can take a test, and they can get hours that have them down to only 9 weeks left to get certified. So, it's a huge cost for parents, and we're just trying to make sure that the word gets out because, the saving is just tremendous. Computer Information Technology. Frank Cathy at Laverne High School, he teaches computer repair. He has 6 students who already completed A+ certification over Christmas. Some of them are sophomores. They can leave there right now and get a job making probably $15, $16 an hour because they're certified. So our students can leave here with A+ and Net+ certification. Cosmetology, any hours that our students take in the high school will carry on to their certification through the cosmetology program. They can complete up to 750 hours in our programs, and then they only need 750 hours to totally complete their cosmetology license. Phlebotomy. I looked at that all day and I said, I know I'm going to get that one wrong. practical nursing, and surgical technology. All of our students in our health science programs will have anatomy. They can move into these programs and get those hours of credit by simply taking the test and being successful for the hours that they've already taken in high school. So that leads them in their health science program. The Georgia Career Institute here in Murfreesboro also gives us credit for cosmetology. Paul Mitchell here by the mall, they give our hours. Anybody that takes cosmetology training, they will accept our students on the number of hours that they've completed through our program. In our industry certification, automotive, our students become certified under Automotive Service Excellence. That's your ASC. You can wear them on that little patch, you know, when you go and you get your car work done, you know they're certified. The four areas that we offer are engine performance, suspension and steering, brakes, and electrical electronics. Upon passing the test of taking that, after they've had these credits, they can then, or classes, they can take the test, and once they have a job for 2 years, they become an ASC certified mechanic. They have to retest this every 5 years. So even my teachers who teach my auto students, they have to get this ASC certification, and they have to renew theirs every 5 years to make sure that they're up to date. And that's offered at Holloway, Oakland, Riverdale, and Smyrna. Carpentry. This is an area that we're really struggling with at Oakland. We've had 3 different teachers teaching carpentry, and our teacher is doing very well this year, but we haven't gotten it certified yet because we want to get a teacher to get their feet on the ground first. This year I will be working with them for them to get certified by the National Center for Construction, Education, and Research. That teacher will get certified, and then those students can get certified once the teacher is certified. So we're working on that one. I mentioned a minute ago about A+ and Net+. Blackman, Laverne, and Siegel offer that certification through networking and computer repair. At Central Magnet, the Pathway to Engineering, which is the project Lead the Way, we're offering Introduction to Engineering Design this year. Next year we will be offering Principles of Engineering. The next year we'll add Digital Electronics and Aerospace Engineering. And so those students will be certified when they graduate from Central. Cosmetology, I already mentioned to you what all we have going with that at Laverne and Oakland. Outside support, I am always looking for money because I never have enough money. And you can ask Mr. Sandvig. He knows that I'm there the last day saying, does anybody have any money they're not spending? I can write it to a requisition right now. I know how to spend it. We have gotten Jennings and Rebecca Jones. They have given us funding for several years for virtual enterprise. They're giving us this year $25,000, and we hope to get $25,000 again next year. They use it for our teacher training, for VE, for trade fair, the business plan competition, and our teacher retreats that we do. Our Perkins Reserve Grant, I'm allowed to apply for 1 reserve grant every other year for the system. 2 years ago, we got our Perkins Reserve Grant for cosmetology at Oakland and Laverne. This year, I've written a grant for Principles of Technology 2 because it's going to cost us about, well, actually, it's going to cost us $172,000 for Principles of Technology 2, but I cannot put Laverne in the grant because they already offer Principles of Technology 2. So therefore, they cannot participate in it, but I'm hoping that we will get their covered under our general purpose funds. And our partnership that we are doing with the Technology Center is to encourage our students to move into industrial electrical maintenance. And those jobs, I mean, some of them start out at $64,000 a year on earnings. So every position that we put in this grant are the high wage jobs that are preparing, that can leave from our school, go to the Technology Center and get into industrial maintenance. And then Middle Tennessee Medical Center, I wrote a letter to them, to Middle Tennessee Medical Center last June, requesting for any items that they would like to get rid of when they open the new hospital. And I thought, man, I can't believe they're not going to at least tell us that they want to get rid of something. Well, I got a letter on Friday saying that on March 8th, I can come and I can bring my health science teachers in there, and anything that we want, they will tag. I've just got to have somebody to get it out of there and bring it here. I've already got it worked out with maintenance, so on the 8th and the 10th of March, we will be going through the old hospital and taking everything that we can possibly find that could be of any kind of use for us, because I will take anything I can find. What you're going to see next, and you all could be asking me questions, but what I've got coming up are just pictures of different programs across the county. These two pictures are cosmetology at Oakland, and then after this, Mr. Odom, it will start going on its own. This shows Riverdale at Ag. Now, I'm telling you, a program that has their act together is Ag. They know how to keep their programs up to date. We're looking at biofuels. We're looking at anything that we need to do to make sure our courses are offering what needs to be for the marketplace now.
Great. Questions for Ms. Nixon?
I make a comment. I went back and pulled up an email that we got from Ms. Jones, the instructor at Laverne, and it reminded me of the competitions that are also part of what takes place in this.
It's huge.
And it identifies 5 students that were regional winners. I know you mentioned Ag. I know that there's a good deal of competition there, and I think that the competition is something that adds another part to what the CTE program can be.
It is very costly for us, for our students to participate in the student organizations, but it is the best thing our students have ever gotten. I know probably many of you were in FFA and learned the leadership skills. We learned that in DECA. We learned that in FBLA. They learn it in Skills USA. We use it in family community services, the FCCLA. They keep changing their name. And all of our students, they are required, in order for me to spend money, federal funds, on their programs, they must participate in this. So they're constantly trying to raise money, because I can't spend money on them if they can't participate in the programs.
I'm sorry, just to further comment on that. I mean, that's the value that we put on the athletic competition, and the reason we support that in some ways through our school system. That competition breeds a level, and it also gives a chance for them to feel some esteem.
And scholarships.
And all of that. So, I mean, I think it just brings a lot of value.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Wayne?
I think there's a misconception that we want to get them certified now so they can start working right out of high school. And that may be okay, but I think it is the desire of this board that came out of the retreat that, yes, we want that to happen at this level, but we want them to go forward, maybe not on the university path, but at least some formal technical school or something along that line to further the education, not just to get out of high school and go to work.
We do a follow-up every year of our graduates, and we know how many are going on to post-secondary, how many are going to the military, how many are going to a job in the area that they studied in high school. But our goal is not every student needs to be at a 4-year university, but everyone needs some training beyond high school, because the jobs today require it. And so our goal is to making sure that all of our students know the different ways that they can go through the technology center, through Montlow or any community college, or to a 4-year institution. And that's what we're working on, is to get the word out, that our parents know what opportunities are there for their students.
Aaron?
I'm probably most intrigued by the middle school offerings that you highlighted, because it gives you that leg up in credit hours toward the high school. What's standing in our way from getting that into more of the middle schools?
Changing their schedule. I mean, Miss Eaton, you were there, and that was the issue, is the other principal said, oh, I don't know how I can make my schedule work. And so Mr. Odom and I talked about them. They've got the same positions that we have. It's changing their schedule and what they want to do.
They basically have to hit those content areas hard, because they're tested in the spring.
That's right. They focus on that.
We've got to do well there, and it does limit electives, so to speak.
Any opportunity that we had to do that, I mean, it would really benefit those students as the credit hours become, higher and higher to get through high school.
Another school, Eagleville, since they are a K-12 school, they have an intro to ag for middle school, so they get a credit going into high school from ag also.
Excellent.
Well, great. Thank you for that report, Ms. Nixon.
Extremely impressive presentation. Very well done.
Dr.
Hey,
Burns,
can we do?
go ahead.
No, that's all right.
Go ahead.
One thing before we get back to Mr. Odom. You highlighted, pardon me here. The statistics about CTE graduation rate. I've heard some people, and I don't want to, put any, cast any doubt on those statistics, but if they don't get those credit hours and such, are they still counted in the CTE statistics, or do they wash out of that and become general education? Does that contribute to that statistic being as high as it is? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I do. The state calculates that, and they're taking, I believe you have to have had 3 courses in order to be considered for that. So if they take 3 courses, they're actually counted twice. They get a regular ed graduation, they'll be in that percent, and then they'll be in the CTE percent also.
They only count in our percentage if they are a concentrator, which means they have completed 3 credits in CTE in one area. That's the only way they count in the report card.
Okay.
And that's why our average is great.
Great, yeah.
It's wonderful.
That's good.
Donald?
Well, of course, this is an area that I absolutely love, and think it's an extremely important part of education. A lifetime of learning can take place right here. The kids who participate in FFA and DECA and those things, do we have any statistics on how their grades are compared to the other students? I know that we have lots of kids involved in the classes, but there is a smaller number that actually participate in the organizations themselves. And I have found in dealing with those students, they seem to be very school-oriented, high school spirit, and on their way, it gives me the impression, on their way to being good citizens long after they leave high school.
That's correct. And you see them because of the leadership skills that they have learned from the student organizations, because they drill that and they compete in those areas of job interviews and marketing skills, this type of thing. All of those areas have those type of competition. And the maturity that those students leave high school with is just phenomenal because they have had those skills.
Yesterday afternoon, I was finishing up my work on the farm, and in drives a pickup truck with a high school senior in it. Guess what he wanted to tell me? He wanted to tell me about the competition he had been at that day.
Just that day.
And he was working toward block laying. And he had to tell me all about it. And I was very pleased to hear it and see his enthusiasm. And he left with something good to say about his school day.
That's wonderful.
And I just was so pleased to hear that. And I'll say this, too. I just recently bought a panel mover. Now, some of you won't understand that if you don't follow, right. But that came from the ag class in Lincoln County. The ag teacher heard me say in Lincoln County one day that I would like to have a panel mover for livestock panel mover, and he was looking for a project, and lo and behold, in behind his pickup truck comes a panel mover that those students had made in the ag class in the shop in Lincoln County. Wow. And we have ag shops here and other shops in technology, and the potential is great for that type of thing.
I received an email yesterday from one of our health science teachers. They have a student who won first place at state competition, and they will be going to nationals in California for health science.
Tim, let me also add that there's a considerable amount of work that's done through our CTE classes that benefit the schools themselves. Lots of repairs, lots of things built. I could probably walk you around the Oakland campus and show you the different projects that were completed or at least helped through the number of copies, the number of prints, the number of signs, the signs, and that was done. I was able to call the print shop department at Riverdale to make a lot of the signs that you see at Oakland are professionally done. And they were, even though a great rival, very anxious to help us out and did everything they could to accommodate what we were asking for.
We'll still work with each other. That's right.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Gill, thank you for that report. Yeah.
There's several CTE teachers in the crowd. I see Mr. Ford out there, and I see some of these ladies I recognize. In the back, we got Brian and also Mr. Haley. Is he still there? He's not here. Okay. You know what? Since Mr. Donald Jernigan and I started in education, Mr. Tackett, the ag programs has changed so much. I remember going out to Siegel when you were at Siegel and you were raising tilapia, growing tomatoes. It was just fascinating. Now, the last time I talked to you, Brian, you were planning on taking a stab at raising shrimp, I recall. Can you give us, you've driven all the way from Eagleville, can you give us about a 2-minute summary of how ag has changed in the last several years, if no one objects to that?
No.
I think it'd be really informational for the viewing audience, and also something else for me to learn.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gill, and members of the board for spotlighting the CTE programs in our county, as well as giving Ms. Nixon and Mr. Odom the opportunity to highlight some of the things that we're doing. As far as how agriculture has changed, most people that are really not in touch on a daily basis with our industry, we go to our table every day and we eat. We really don't think a whole lot about where that food came from or how it got there. But agriculture has changed. Most people still look at schools and say, well, why do we have an ag teacher? Why is that a necessity? If people would come and spend a day and see the dynamic things that are taking place in our programs, as my advisor in college used to say, agriculture is not just sows, plows, and cows anymore. It is very much a dynamic industry that's on the cutting edge of technology. Many of the things that we are seeing now in the mainstream started out in the agricultural industry in some facet. Biotechnology, we're working more science concepts into what we do. I'm sure some of you are familiar with our agri-science course that freshmen can take that counts as a science credit in the agricultural pathway. Studies have shown, and I have studies on file at school that show that students that are enrolled in that course typically go on in other science courses and outperform the other students. And see, people wonder why. It is because it's more grounded. We can take science concepts and we can tie them back to the real world, and it makes sense and it's practical to them. We're looking at some of our programs in the county. We're talking about some of those. The veterinary science pathway that we're seeing now is becoming a tremendous pathway that students are taking a phenomenal interest in because of the fact you're dealing with animals. And when you ask a lot of kids what they want to do, usually the common response is be a veterinarian. So of course, when they look at the fact that there's 8 years of school left after high school, that changes some of them, but we still see a lot of students that go on and become veterinary technicians, animal care workers. They may work in clinics, they may work in pet stores, the plant science industry. is becoming really, really large. I'm seeing numbers all the time now that by the year 2050, we as a society, as a world, have to be prepared to feed 9 million people. And it's not just necessarily the farmer in the field, that 1% of our population that's doing that. It's the people that are in the labs, that are in the different situations, that are working and breeding new varieties of plants, or working with genetics and genetic modification to really bring new things to the forefront. The agricultural programs are phenomenal. We're fortunate that we are in a school system here where we have had a board and we've had a central office staff at this level that has been supportive of the things that we are doing. And it's very much not those traditional programs like you used to see 15 or 20 years ago. And as far as going back to what Mr. Jernigan had mentioned earlier, there has been a study done by the Horatio Alger Institute that actually addressed the effects of students joining, for example, FFA, and comparing them to the regular mainstream high school student. And typically the students who are involved in activities such as FFA typically are more likely to set goals. They're more likely to go on and take some form of higher education after high school, be it a technical school or a four-year degree. And academically, they outperformed, in most cases, the other students in the schools. And I think, as you said, we can attribute a lot of that back to the leadership skills that are really pushed in our programs in every class that we'd have. And I can say that not just for agricultural education, but I'm sure for across the board for all CTE programs. So, but any other questions?
Yeah, will you bring me some shrimp?
One day. We've got to get them raised first. We'll see what we can do. Thank you.
Let me make one more
Brian.
remark to the love fest that we're having here. But I will say, and this is not taking anything away from the teachers and other departments and so forth, but I do get a real sense that CTE teachers are really in tune to what it is that they do, and they bring a great passion to what they do, and that passion can be translated to students. And those students that connect with those teachers really cause them to have some things. I mean, there clearly is a huge place for what we're trying to do.
All right. Yes, sir.
The only other thing that I would add is we're interested in moving this forward, and the discussion and the presentation is absolutely outstanding. It looks like we're doing a great job, but have we identified anything that is next step that Ms. Nixon would want, in the future? More funding, we heard that. But in addition to that, are there anything else? Could we get a follow-up maybe at the April 5th?
We're actually going to we're forming a committee. We'll in the process of doing so, we'll be asking a board member to serve on it to address the issues that were raised at the board meeting and perhaps set some new goals that we could attain.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the things we specified at our retreat, was not only to get this report, which has been very good, but to have a committee to explore what we might do. So we are doing that. I think we're ready for number 10.
Special course requests. The instruction department is requesting permission to make an application to offer credit for special courses under the following guidelines. Rule 520-1-3-.05-2A. Local school systems may offer special courses not listed in 520-1-3-.06 on an experimental basis. Ministry of Education must approve each course in advance of each year. After 3 years, the course may become a permanent part of the local school program upon approval by the State Board of Education. And we recommend that you approve the Rutherford County, approve Rutherford County to make application for the following courses to be offered in the named schools 2011-2012. We went back and researched one of the questions you had was with respect to strength and conditioning 1, 2, and 3. All they're doing is put it on there for 3-year approval. They're in the first phase of that course request, and also we've advised that people who want in there can get in there, either sex.
So moved.
Second.
As Mr. Gill said, we had considerable discussion about this on Tuesday night. Donald?
I just wonder if Mr. Odom could tell me what path that strength and conditioning class.
He should know that. He should know that. There you go.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion's adopted. Number
11. Courses offered for credit in grades 9 through 12. Board of Education Policy 4.201 states in part, a listing of courses offered for credit in grades 9 and 12 will be approved annually by the board. Note, the Tennessee Department of Education has notified systems that a new list of course titles and course numbers will not be released until at least February the 15th. There may be some course name adjustments with updated state information is received. Recommend that you approve the list of courses for credit in Rutherford County grades 9 through 12 for 2011-2012 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
It's probably as good a place as any. There was some conversation after the meeting on Tuesday about having full credit offerings at all of the schools. Mr. Gill invited me to a meeting yesterday that was very beneficial in clarifying that the high schools are all offering that opportunity. However, there's no slack in the road. And so if a student stumbles anywhere along the way, I know from that meeting, the administrations of each of the schools, and particularly the guidance counselors and the graduation coaches, are really intent on grade recovery, credit recovery, and getting them back on track. They're going to use some structure to make sure that we get our graduations right. So it's important that we use any of these opportunities to get early credit, to get summer school credit, and don't stumble along the way. Every credit hour is even more important, and it gives you the flexibility then when you're on track and you're on task to be able to enjoy the extracurricular or those other opportunities. And that's what that meeting really revealed. Mr. Gill, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that came out of it, I thought it was pretty impressive. Principals Laverne, Blackman, Oakland were there, and we had discussions about their schedules and how they compared, and almost identical offerings, slight differences. But one of the interesting things I know at Laverne High, they, through their ESPN time, they've recovered well over 400 credits this year that will be applied towards student graduation, and it's pretty interesting that that we're able to do that. So, good things taking place.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion's adopted. 12.
Financial matters. GPS budget amendment. This amendment budgets an additional $11,551 in the state's early childhood education grant, account 46515, to the system, and applies the funds towards medical insurance line item in this program, account 73400-207. The amendment also amends the capital outlay function in order to transfer $61,160 to the building program fund so that the $75,600 Xcel Energy change order approved at the February 16, 2011 board meeting can be kept with the rest of the lighting sensor project. The $14,440 in grant funding will also flow through the building program, and we recommend that you amend an additional $11,551 in state early childhood education grant revenues, account 46515, to increase related medical insurance budget, account 73400-207, and to amend capital outlay function as presented in order to transfer $61,160 to the building program fund for funding the $75,600 Xcel Energy change order.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion's adopted. General discussion. Terry, you had something, I think.
Yeah, I just gonna bring up one thing. I talked to Dr. Burns after the meeting the other night. The ones that went down last week, the day on the Hill, to see the legislators and meet with them. One of the issues that's, or one of the bills that's coming up is the elected versus appointed superintendents. And we heard from all our representatives that all of them but one was basically in favor of the appointed, and Representative Womack asked that if we were all unanimous as a board, he would vote the same way. So I don't know how the board feels about it, but I think if the board's in favor of it, we need to have the chairman or somebody draft a letter to him letting let him know how the board stands on it.
I think it's a good idea. This is an issue that won't die, unfortunately, in the legislature, and this year it seems like it might have a slightly greater chance of passage. So I think that's probably a really good idea.
To do that in resolution form?
Be quicker just doing a letter form,
Okay.
unless TSBA has a resolution already drafted. I don't know. I don't have an opinion. Whatever the board wants to do.
A letter be fine with me.
I mean, I think all of them are pretty on board, and Representative Womack will be once he gets. I think that's the main point of this, isn't it, Terry? Aaron, did you have a comment?
Is it appropriate then to entertain a motion?
Sure.
Then I would make the motion that the board acknowledge our desire for the director of schools to be in appointed position.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Everybody okay with that? Because I will stress that it's unanimous, but I don't want to misspeak. And just for the folks viewing at home, anybody who's followed county schools and county politics over the last 20, 30 years, it's been a major improvement to have an appointed superintendent. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
I would like to say that it's one of the few things that the state has ever done that I'm aware of that they passed several years ago and they haven't really made any changes to it. I think it'd probably be good if they'd look at, I don't think it's a perfect law that they had with the director of schools, so I think they ought to look at it and maybe critique some things here and there. But as far as supporting them, I think it's certainly beneficial.
Okay. So all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion's adopted. Other discussion? Wayne.
Since I was the architect of this changing the evaluation format, maybe the discussion will go away until next year, but I feel compelled to say just a couple of things. Did request, especially since we've received some stinging criticism from the D&J about the evaluation format, you know, I asked or requested a copy of their format. Well, they couldn't comply because of their policy. But
you asked for a copy of the New Journal's format?
Yes. And so, you know, I was just going to compare it to ours. And again, they couldn't supply that, and that's okay. But what I will say about what I proposed, what we approved, and what we did was basically developing within our board some critical and reflective thinking. Also, it's subjective. It's our opinion. And I think it's much easier to go through and do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and give a couple of comments. It's much easier to do that than it is to go through a complete narrative, take the areas of expertise that you want to comment on, and say what you think. And I think that's what we did. I know that's what we did. And the board can do what it wants. But this time next year, when we do the evaluation, I'm still going to propose that we stay with the narrative because it's much more difficult, because it makes us think about what the director of schools' duties are and how he's performed them, and we did that this time. So I won't reject the criticism because I accept the criticism, but I think the D&J in their criticism did not think it through, because I believe our system, the way we did it this time, is much better than what we've done in the past, in my opinion.
Thank you, Wayne. I already said my piece on that earlier in the meeting. Any more discussion on that point or any other point? Aaron.
And in our last meeting, we had the second reading of several policies that we made revisions on. Unfortunately, since then, we did have an arrest within our system. I understand from Mr. Gill that we were very aware of that, and just wanted to check on that situation, make sure that we were rolling that policy out and all of our faculty was aware of it.
Angel, come up here a minute. Actually, we were scheduled to, we had a principals meeting on Monday, which that was one of our agenda items, and we canceled it because of all the tornado warnings in the area, and we felt like it was appropriate for the principal to remain in school, but kind of give an update with respect to what we're up to.
Well, first of all, the policy is posted online and has been. That incident was reported as it was supposed to be. We have a principals meeting scheduled with elementary principals on next Friday, and then a principal meeting with middle and high schools on the following Monday to give the information to them. So they have an opportunity to discuss it with their staff first. We will then send it out and email to all staff and in our news and notes that Mr. Evans sends out. So there'll be three ways that it's sent out. But we thought we would give the principals an opportunity to ask questions about it first, make sure they understand it, and have an opportunity to discuss it. But this one was reported.
Good, thanks.
Go ahead.
No.
Go ahead. It's kind of reluctant to tell this, but I guess I better real quick. Got a call from Scott Broden, I don't know, a couple days ago. Scott said he works out where Mayor Tommy Bragg does, and Tommy told him that I don't know how they reached the point where they were discussing school consolidation, but somehow they got to that point. And Tommy mentioned that he and Roger Haley had asked me 3 years ago to make him an offer. And I don't know why they think I have that kind of authority or that kind of power. But at some point in the last 3 or 4 years, Jeff, Lisa Nolan, Mayor Burgess, myself, Roger Haley, right, Jeff went in on it. Anyway, we met with the city representatives about school.
I believe I was there.
You were there?
A little insulted
Yeah.
that you didn't remember
I'm
that.
sorry. Well, it's been a long night. Trust me. Anyway, and I told Scott the other day, I don't know that anybody on this board has ever suggested they aspire to take over the city. We got a good working relationship with the board. I said, Scott, it better play out that way. We have a good relationship with Dr. Gilbert. You know, they're doing some good things our way. And kind of directed him to Mayor Burgess because Mayor Burgess was in on that meeting. And at the end of the day, I would assume it'd be a responsibility of the county court and the mayor and the school board all as a group to collectively, you know, pursue that kind of endeavor. And I don't immediately foresee that in the future, but I do immediately see in the near future an article in the DNJ about it. So be prepared.
You know,
see how that plays out.
We did look at that pretty carefully, I think, and determined that it, first of all, is not going to save money. I mean, a lot of people are under the impression that it would, but there may be some reasons to do it, but saving money is not one of them. I mean, you're going to need at least as many staff as you have. You would not have 2 directors, but other than that, you're going to need.
Well, I think we decided that the savings might, that it'd be expense in parity and salaries. I think those folks make a little more than our teachers, which it'd be great to bring them to that level. But it would take $2 or $3 million, as I recall. Yeah. You know, it might help with things like transportation might be a little smoother, zoning might be a little smoother. But there were some serious costs with pursuing that.
You know, the bottom line, it's the city's decision, not ours.
Well, that too has changed. That's my understanding. The city now, I think Memphis was ready to get out of the business, maybe turn it over to Shelby County. Now there's something at the legislature, I don't know if it's passed or not, but it said it would be about a 3-year process. There has to be, teams of folks from both districts work together for a transition, and it works out over 3 days. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, in retrospect, I don't think the city could say tomorrow, hey, we went out of the business.
Well, did that apply only to Memphis, though? That was my understanding of the law.
I don't think so. James, you know more?
I do. I did some research on this because...
Come up here, James, please.
I did some research on this because Mr. Broden and I did talk about this the other day, and there's been a new bill that's passed the legislature that the governor has signed that basically it was in response to the Memphis and Shelby County issue, but it applies to anyone in the state that basically says that any special school district cannot simply dissolve itself immediately. There has to be a transition plan in place which requires committees. I believe it says in there it's a 2 or 3 year process. They can't just say, hey, starting tomorrow we're done.
and drop the kids, because that's what the situation was developing in Memphis, which they were just going to say, we're done, you guys take them.
But the decision of whether to do it would still be the city.
Absolutely. The city still has the right to say they want to pursue ending it.
But they'd have to go through that process.
But there's a process they have to go through.
Well, that's a good change, yes, me. Wayne?
Well, my understanding was that after the referendum, if the referendum, the majority was they wanted to terminate.
Yeah, I left out that part. There's a referendum required as well.
And then the committee process started. Okay.
Referendum in the city, not, or the special district, not in the county?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks for alerting us to that. I mean, we'll be looking forward to reading about that in the paper, but it is an issue that generates a lot of discussion out in the community. Tim?
On I think similar, I had a conversation with a city board member recently, just asked an update, so I'll just ask that. I know that we are now in some type of formal communication back and forth as boards, and so just maybe an update for folks to let them know that there is cooperation taking place and how that's working.
We met, obviously, we met with them also. We've got a little mini consortium worked out here where met with Elizabeth Church and Mr. Odom the other day. We'll do some literacy training together this summer and share expenses. I think that's the way it worked. So that was really a neat step in the right direction. So, like, for example, our K-5 teachers will be in with theirs, K-6, pardon me. And, you know, I think it's in the spirit of working together. I thought it was pretty neat that we were able to work that out. And our instructional department's working closely with them.
Okay. Further discussion?
Did I mention I was a long-term subscriber to the D&J?
They may not deliver your paper tomorrow.
In a wet paper. All right, we're adjourned.